Thank you, Business World, Devika, for inviting us and once again putting together a very diverse panel. Today we have quick introductions. Ms. Arpita Mukherjee, who is the professor ICRIER. Ms. Gayatri Das, Head Talent Attraction and Engagement, PepsiCo. Mr. Anil Sahni, who is joining us virtually. He's the Human Resources for Art, Housing, Finance. Deepak, Boora, Director, Data Security Council of India. And this is me, Arijit Ray. I run a branding and advertising agency called The Unlock Company. My last stint in the professional sector was CEO of Dentsu India. And I also run sessions in organizations called Unlock Your Potential from Vedic Wisdom. When we start talking, you can just add a couple of lines about what you do. So today I think we've got a very good panel and issue and a topic that's extremely important for the future. The workplace of the future is, I think, changing so rapidly, as if it seems that the future has got pushed back. Eclectic changes, spellbinding changes, tectonic shifts are happening, and conventions and frameworks, old frameworks, are constantly broken down in front of us. So today we'll spend some time discussing the various issues that are involved in building the talent pipeline of the future. And all of us understand that if the future is a measure of what we are seeing today, then tomorrow's talent has got to be far more talented, skilled, competitive, and at the same time ready to adapt. So my first question to Gayatri, you've actually played pivotal roles in large global organizations. You're a head of talent at Pepsi, and would like to ask you, what are the various things you are doing at Pepsi? Because it's also important to get a perspective of what large organizations are doing. What are you doing at Pepsi towards skilling employees to face the dynamic world?
Okay, I think that's a very important question considering how our demographics are changing currently. I will probably take a step back. I will talk about skilling for people who might see Pepsi as one of the future employers for them. And there's this initiative called as Revolutionary, which is one of the flagship initiatives of PepsiCo India, which is Revolution for the Nari, empowering 1 million women, impacting households. And this initiative is a lot about skilling. It's a lot about driving awareness opportunities, just not for women, but everybody who wants to be a part of this initiative. I'll tell you what exactly we have done differently. This is just not PepsiCo initiative. So when we embarked on this journey, we looked at that there is this early talent pool which exists for everyone. All of us who are operating in industries, large, mid, small size organizations. How do we kind of create that talent pool which each of these organizations will be able to extend that opportunity to? So what we did is, when we were reaching out to this early talent, we looked at like-minded organizations, right? So I have to give you a few, like Vadhvani Foundation is one of our AI skilling partners who joined hands with us, saying that we will reach out to rural, semi-rural, urban parts of the country, wherein we are going to skill students on employability, because that is one of the biggest gap that our country is currently facing. There are courses, there are curriculums, academia that exist, but children do not have the right skills on employability. And when we started reaching out, we realized that PepsiCo can only hire as much, right? There are many other organizations like us who would want to hire students who may not be privileged enough but have the right skills to be absorbed in organizations. So we have partnered with many other organizations. We have looked at possibilities with organizations like Diageo, Pernod, etc., where we say that we skill together, we provide you those opportunities. And those opportunities that they're learning in terms of skilling are all AI driven. Now that is the part which comes before someone joins Pepsi as an employer of choice. But when you join Pepsi, I think one of the most important things, and I was hearing the previous panel as well, everybody's talking about AI. But what we don't understand is that how do you use AI, right? So, I mean, the organization is heavily invested in training, skilling people on how do you use AI for business problems. Now again, as one of the gentlemen from the previous panel said, that the creative thinking has to come from you, right? AI is there to refine. So how do you smartly use AI is one of the skilling opportunities that we're looking at. Also as an organization, we have pivoted strongly on digital transformation. So very simple examples, our HR business partners are in true sense HR business partners. Our managers are the ones who are so digitally savvy, they run most of the employee lifecycle processes on their own. And that requires a lot of digital enablement from the training and the learning and development teams of PepsiCo globally.
Excellent. So on the one hand, you're doing a program called the 1 Million Women, which is through ecosystem partnerships. That's great. When large organizations start doing this, I think it's a great example. And secondly, creating digitally savvy professionals in the system. That's great. Deepak, you're a part of Data Security Council of India and dealing with cyber security and awareness. And in today's context, it's very important to have awareness about cyber security, right? And in that context, in the discussion that I was having with you, you were talking about from the philanthropic wing, you have a program to kind of enhance awareness amongst underprivileged sections of society to build awareness around cybersecurity frameworks. I think it's a very praiseworthy initiative. Can you just talk about it?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Ray. First of all, good evening to all and hats off to Business World for inviting me out here. Plus, the sessions are on time. I think that's the biggest positive I've seen after attending so many events. Even our own events are not on time. So thank you to Devika and team. Plus, they're also having an online webcast, which I was following when I was on my way to the venue. So big thanks to BW team, and hopefully you keep the good work in future events as well. And the panel before this one, we talked about AI and all the parameters. See, the one thing that we need to understand is AI is just an enabler. AI will not operate itself unless somebody is planning to prepare a Terminator, right? We need to have that human element always, and human intelligence cannot be ahead of artificial intelligence at any given point in future times or present or in past. So what we have to do is that we have to scale our employees, our future generations, that they should be better prepared to use AI as a tool and not consider it as a freebie or something which will make them lazy or avoid their hard work. So it can be sort of a tool to just make their work more effective. Now coming to the question which Mr. Ray just asked. So folks, I am director at Data Security Council of India, and what I do is I lead a philanthropy initiative known as Cyber Siksha and Cyber Vahini, where what we do is we train young women folks from tier 2 and tier 3 towns in cyber security. We train them for 4 months and then we employ them in cyber security jobs. Because what we feel and what is happening today is data is the new oil. Tomorrow, whosoever controls data will be controlling economies, geographies and world ultimately, right? And the next war will be fought on data only. For India's point, the next war will be on pani, parking and data, sadly. So the point is that these young girls, they have the talent but they don't have the wings to fly. And empowering them in such an important area of cyber security, where not only they becoming cyber aware, they're making their family cyber aware, they're making the communities where they live there to be cyber aware. And I doubt if there is anyone in this room who is not getting a spam call or a spam message, right, or a lucrative message to take advantage of a free gift or a free trip or a free bonus coming your way. So we need to train our folks in cyber, and the world that is trying to counter it, they are actually getting more and more advanced day by day. So this is a small start that we are trying to achieve by empowering these young girls, and we are thankful to big corporates like Pepsi and others who have actually supported by hiring these youngsters, giving them opportunity at such a young age. And some of them are doing really well. It's been almost 7 years since we have started this particular movement, and interestingly, a focus and attention of top organizations is now coming on cyber security, that they are realizing the sensitivity that they have to not only skill the future workforce, but they have to skill their own in-house employees about cyber awareness. Because ultimately what is there with organizations, it's a data only that all of them are managing in some way or the other, whether it's a Pepsi, a bank, a hospital, a railway, a service provider, an airline, what are they having? They're having data only. And data is the new oil. And today we have the data rules being passed in force. So trust is the new, after time, trust is the new thing that somebody would be investing. If you lose trust, I'm sorry, you will be losing your business.
Excellent. I think what's also happening is by this initiative, you're creating employability at the grassroots level. That's a huge, huge plus. Arpita, you've been working on research papers, working with the government to evaluate various frameworks to promote trade. And in the course of the discussions, you were also talking about frameworks so that our MSME sector can get access to international markets. So in that context, what are some of the training requirements are you looking at for the MSME to access more and more international markets?
Thank you very much for the invite to this event. See, when you look at domestic versus international, the entire story changes, because there your training has to be very holistic. You take into account both the regulatory compliance requirements. That becomes a very important part of the training, because if you do not follow the regulations and compliance, you have a very high chance of product rejection. Secondly, you have to look at a training process which reduces your cost of doing business, because the moment you go international, it is not always easy to go international. Now, onboarding into platform is fine, but after onboarding into platform, what are the processes? How do you get your money back? How do you avail the government schemes? Like, there are so many schemes which helps you to promote exports through, say, e-commerce platform. What happens if there is a return consignment? These are very basic things that you need to think through when you go into an international market. And most important is, when are you doing a B2B transaction, you have to be very careful whether the person sitting on the other side is a real person or not. There is huge amount of fraud that happens in international B2B transaction. We think it will be B2 consumer transaction, that's the problem, but bigger problem lies in business to business transaction, which is actually the bigger part of the global e-commerce trade and exports. One needs to be very careful. Sometimes payments are made, consignments don't go, sometimes they get stuck. So all these training processes involves a combination of understanding regulations and using the technology. The technology that you use for domestic onboarding, say into an e-commerce platform or creating a social media website, is very, very different when you launch and you interact with that globally. When you interact globally, you have to look at currency conversions, you have to look at payment systems being authenticated, you have to look at the business partner being authenticated, and also when the country does not have English as a language, you need to be very careful how you maneuver the legal documents, because sometimes it is always that you ask a lawyer to interpret and some other lawyer may be interpreting it in a very different way. So it is always good to be in touch with the relevant embassies in the foreign markets and cross-check the data and information, compile the notebook, cross-check the data and information, identify your risk, prioritize your risk, and have a risk mitigation strategy. So one of the core training that we actually give for MSMEs going abroad is not only market knowledge but also a risk identification and a risk mitigation strategy, so that they are aware to take an action when a problem happens. So these are the kind of trainings.
Very interesting, and what's more relevant is that the international dynamics are very different and the domestic dynamics are different. And that is where you come in, that bringing in those knowledge systems and making a difference at the operation level. Otherwise, at the operation level, the bottlenecks come, and that's what you're trying to address. So, net, it's important to understand that the employee of tomorrow has to be really versatile, because otherwise, it's going to be a very, very difficult situation. Sabina is online. Welcome, Sabina. Welcome to you online.
Thank you so much. My apologies for being a few
No
minutes.
problem, no problem. You, Sabina, you've been working at the policy level and the government, with various departments. You've been working on workforce development, skilling. You've been working on building common core competencies. And in the course of our conversations, you were actually talking about the major issue, which is skill gap. And you were saying that, the skill gap might actually become more worse. So can you comment a little bit how big the problem is and what are some of the steps that are being taken to address the skill gap issue?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you again for the invitation to be here today and for having a conversation on what is, I think, one of the most pressing challenges of our time right now. You see, the environment, labor markets, our economies are shifting very, very quickly in reaction to technology, climate change, energy transition, pandemics, right? All of these forces are upending the way that we live and work. And so, this puts a lot of pressure on labor markets, and our young people will not only have to adjust once in their life, like maybe, my father had the same job for 40 plus years, but they will actually have to skill and reskill constantly. So against this really disruptive context, let me just take a minute to talk about where we are today. Absolutely, the skill gap is, a really, really big challenge. Just to put the challenge in perspective, we have about 370 million young people, approximately 370 million young people between the ages of 15 to 29. And that is higher than the entire population of, take your pick, any industrialized country, right? That 15 to 29 segment is more people than the entire population of the United States, for example. So what we're facing is a huge challenge just in terms of sheer numbers. Add on to that these massive disruptions that are taking place. And it really compounds, the problems that we're seeing in our labor market. There's a lot of studies that try to project what the skill deficit is. So, some people say there's a 50 million deficit, skills deficit. Even as the country produces large numbers of educated youth, we still have, 50 million that don't have the skills. Other studies say, 60% of ITI graduates or 70% of polytechnic graduates are unemployable. There's a number of different estimates that look at, employability. For me, just going back to the basics, despite all of our efforts certainly over the last decade and more on skills training, only 4.1% of respondents in our labor force survey actually identify as having any formal skills, right? This is the government's own periodic labor force data. So, so there is a massive skills deficit, and the extension of that skills deficit is also the fact that the skills that ITIs, polytechnics are imparting, and not just those, but even our education system, what we're imparting to young people is actually completely out of touch and not aligned with the current demands of business and employers. And now we're expecting people to change even more frequently and upskill and reskill even more frequently. So all of this paints a very dismal picture of where we're at. But I don't want to end on a very negative note. So let me give you two, silver linings to this very dismal story and the scale of the challenge. The scale of the challenge notwithstanding, one is that we do now have a National Education Policy 2020 and the National Curricular Framework, which actually mandates that children get exposed to vocational education from class 6 onwards. And great efforts are being taken, as we think about the implementation of the NEP in the States. How do we better align this to demand, to what businesses want, to what small businesses want, to what local economies want? And I think that's a fundamental shift. Of course, we'll have to see how this plays out, but I think that that's a really important step. The other thing is that we have a mass recognition that employers and industry have to be involved in skills training, and you can pick your mechanism, whether it's through apprenticeships and under the Apprenticeship Act, whether it's better implementation of the Apprenticeship Act, whether it's internships, whether it's dual system of training programs. It's very important that we engage industry through all of these different mechanisms in order to make sure that curriculums, training curriculums, all the way from school education to ITIs and higher education are aligned with what the market and what employers demand. So we need to keep on these efforts, and hopefully, we will see a paradigm shift, because there is a growing recognition that this is a humongous problem and an urgent one at that. So, thank you.
Great. Yeah, please.
Thank you so much, Sabina. And I've been on the other side of the table in terms of the lot of initiatives that the government of India is doing. A couple of them, because we've been talking about ITIs, and especially when we talk about manufacturing setups, the one like ours as well, ITI graduates play a very, very important role. And I think one of the biggest positive step that FIXI has taken right now is that they've invited industry partners to identify that what are the skill gaps, not just technically, but even when it comes to management. Right? So oftentimes what happens is management is a function of, as you become a manager, that's when you need to understand the management skills. But now the direction has been that as early as you graduate, you should understand the importance of time management. You should understand the importance of performance management. You should know what does quality mean. So I think that's a very, very positive step. And I think the second one, and all of us would have heard about it, would have been the Prime Minister internship scheme, right? I mean, the magnanimity of the initiative that was taken. One thing was really, an outcome that came out of it was that there is a need from both the sides. There are enough number of talent outside that organizations want to hire, and there are enough opportunities across organizations where these talent can be also absorbed. So I think these are some of the
excellent
yeah.
points. Yeah, very good points. So on the one hand, you talked about scenario which is alarming to some extent, but on the other hand, there are some positive linings which tells us that a lot is being done, and hopefully things should look up. So that's a good thing to be aware of. Anil, now next to you, you have actually had a multifaceted career, from sales to training to housing finance to insurance to telecom, and then finally to HR. So what I want to ask from you, because you're a major proponent of AI, and how can, in the lives, especially of MSME, where the systems and processes are not so robust, how do you think AI and AI tools can play the role of an enabler?
Coming to the question, if you talk about technology or an enabler, let me give you a little background of what we are and how do we actually do the business. See, we are into affordable housing finance segment, and if you see this segment, there are more than 200 NBFCs which are currently active in the country. Now, if there is such a huge competition, what becomes the differentiator for us as an organization is the turnaround time. This entire industry actually works on two USPs. Either you can play on pricing, you give the best pricing to the customer, or you can play on the turnaround time. Means you can sanction and disburse the loan in the least possible time. And therefore, if you see the name of my company, ART, here T stands for technology. Because if you see the housing business, housing finance business, which used to happen a few years ago, it was more of a physical process, wherein a physical file used to move from customer's place to the office, and within office from one department to another. But today, if you see, all of my field staff, they have been provided with tabs, and the entire loan processing, means picking up the documents from the customer, everything is through digital mode. Now, in such kind of scenario, it actually becomes very important for us to drive technology piece in the organization, and I see it as a very big enabler. personally, I believe we need to make lives simple, which means if you see these emerging organizations like us, there are two common things which you will find across the board. One is the budgetary constraints. Being an emerging organization, you will not have ample budgets to bring in all the technologies which are available. Even though if you have a technology, you may not be having an advanced version of it. Second common thing which you see is still, because of the first reason, most of the processes or good number of processes are still manual. Now, as an HR, what I see is, since I always believe in making the life easy for my people, I want to understand role specific, function specific, KRA specific, what are those tasks which they are doing on a repetitive basis. Because most often I always talk about one thing, that in today's scenario where everybody is extremely busy, what is being missed out by majority of the people is a dedicated time to think and strategize the next steps, which is most crucial if we want to grow in corporate hierarchy, if we want to succeed in the competitive world. So keeping this as a backdrop, what normally we do in our art housing finance is we have identified various challenges, challenges in various roles, and we are trying to link those challenges with the available technologies. I can give you very basic examples, like the one which I personally use also. I'm a very big fan of Microsoft Copilot. I have already tried Chat GPT, Perplexity, so nothing against them. But as an individual, I like using Microsoft Pilot. Why do I like? Because there are so many tasks which I keep doing repetitively. They are actually made easy by this technology. Like I give you example. The people in my team, like suppose if they are recruitment team members, normally if you see the legacy organizations, they will be having a dedicated ATS platform, advanced kind of HRMS platform, which do the initial screening of the resumes. Now, being an emerging organization, although I have an HRMS, but it is not that advanced. I don't have an ATS. So how do I actually make life of my recruiters easy? The best way is if you use Microsoft Copilot, and if we give it say 15 resumes, in a very quick span of time, maybe few seconds, it evaluates all the resumes, do the SWOT analysis, rank them in orders, and tell us why each resume is good and what is the reason, which are the rank 1, rank 2, rank 3, and why they are being ranked 1, 2, 3. I understand we cannot depend blindly on the AI thing because it is still evolving. But if you give inputs, like recently I was hiring for one particular position wherein I have multiple resumes in hand. Now, practically, if you ask me, without an ATS, screening 100 or more resumes is very difficult. So I picked up few resumes, I given to Copilot, it did all the SWOT analysis, put the ranking, and told me why these rankings, what's the rationale behind these rankings. So after checking those rankings, I gave him again input, no, this ranking is not good according to me because this is the reason. So after 3-4 attempts, finally I was able to get top 10 candidates out of those 100 plus resumes. The task which could have taken me 2 to 3 days to evaluate or even more, it has done within an hour's time. That's the very basic example of how AI tools can actually simplify our life. So the same thing we are telling our recruiters, okay, fine. See, I am not saying that AI is a replacement to the skill sets which we have as an human beings. But I also believe in one thing, the limitation which we have as a human being is the speed. And technology is something which actually removes that limitation. It speeds up the entire process. I give you another example, like junior team members in my HR operations team. They deal with several emails pertaining to regular communications to employees or pertaining to disciplinary actions or something else as well. So this Copilot also actually, if you give them the context that what exactly you want to do, within seconds, it gives you the draft. So why do we apply mind and time in drafting something which can be easily done through this Copilot? These are few examples. But since I'm from HR, I'm giving you examples pertaining to HR. But there are other functions as well. Like if I talk about my marketing team, we suggested them a tool like Boora. You give them a text script, it creates the video.
Excellent.
Something very fast. So these are few examples through which we are trying to evaluate and understand that what are the repetitive tasks in each of the function, and especially at the junior level roles. If we can use the available resources, maybe their productivity can improve, their time can be saved, and they can utilize these times in something else. Maybe they can use this time in building their own capabilities of the teams, or they can use this time in improvising the current processes, or maybe something else also.
Great.
So for me, technology is definitely a very big enabler, and it can actually help a lot. Even in the beginning of my this discussion, I talked about that in our industry now the files are more in digital forms. So as an organization, we are using those technologies so that the TAT can be reduced.
Excellent, excellent. So that's you're talking about technology being a major enabler. I think great examples. You've put some great examples. So I'll move on. So we have about 8 minutes. We don't have a time for second round of questions, but I'll be quickly discuss something that is close to everybody's heart, and we've been discussing this whole aspect of, what is the most important battle that every employee faces. Do you all agree that we are all in the battlefield of life?
Yeah, completely.
We're all in the battlefield of life, right?
So,
what is the most important battlefield of our lives? Can anybody say? What is the most important battlefield of our lives? Which is the most important battlefield of our lives, where every day, every moment a battle is being played on? No, even deeper. Where is the most important battle? Our own self, in our own minds. सबसे बड़ा कुरुक्षेत्र कहाँ पे है? अपने मन में. 5,000 years back, Arjuna had a huge problem. What happened to Arjuna? I'll quickly give a quick rundown. Arjuna told Bhagavan Shri Krishna to take the chariot to the middle of the battlefield. And he said, Le Kuruo ko dekh le. The moment he saw Dronacharya and Bhishma Pitamaha, the person who was ready to command the army, within minutes he sank to his chariot. And he said, Vipachista sharire me roma harshate jayate. My Gandiva smalling, Gandiva sramsate hastak tamchaida paridhiyate. My skin is burning, I'm shuddering. I cannot fight. In spite of knowing that it is dharma to fight, he could not fight. And he started justifying, giving excuses to Lord Shri Krishna. And Lord Shri Krishna tells him, Klebam masmagama partha nahi tattva. Ye tujhe kya ho gaya hai? Ye attachment kahan se aa gaya? Shudram hridaya daurbalyam tyakta tushta parantapa. You stand up and fight. You're a scorcher of enemies. Ye tujhe shobha nahi deta. It's a brilliant maxim. In organizations, when leaders talk to their subordinates, instead of actually telling them that this is your fault, they can tell them, Ye tujhe shobha nahi deta. You're capable of much greater things. Now, what we have to understand, we have to ask ourselves, in corporate India, how much of this knowledge is being disseminated in organization to tackle the battlefield of our minds? Because at that point of time, Arjuna developed two emotions, sokha and moha. He got deluded into thinking that the war is not right. Similarly, in a corporate situation, when an outcome is against our expectation, what happens to that particular person? That person gets deluded. His mind gets clouded, and in a clouded mind, you cannot take the correct decisions. So, what are we doing in corporate India to bring this ancient knowledge, or even if you not talk about Bhagavad Gita, what are we doing? By the grace of the Lord, I do sessions in organizations. Whenever I did these sessions, people are telling that ye pehle kyun nahi bataya gaya? When Vivekananda is saying, arise, awake, and stop not till the goal is reached, stand up, be bold, be strong, take the whole responsibility on your shoulders. You are the creator of your own destiny. Now, when you talk to organizations, they're saying that, we'll talk about it. We want some programs which can be linked to sales. But if we are actually making a difference in aiding a person to deal with their minds, you are giving him a framework which will help that person not only in his house, in his home, with his friends and at office. So I want to ask all of you, What are some of the things that is being done? Is this discussion happening? Are we proactively hand-holding our employees' hands to make them more proficient in terms of developing a positive and healthy mind? What about?
I think this is my favorite question. I was just, yearning to kind of respond somehow. But I think there is a very, very famous terminology that we all use during a performance appraisal, which is called feedback, right? And there's another terminology which is called feed forward. There's a difference. Oftentimes when we talk about feedback, feedback is a negative term. And in the back of our minds, all of us subconsciously related to negativity. Feed forward is, to your point, Arijit, where we say that, this is what you've achieved. This is how you could have done it differently. Okay? This has a huge impact on the person who's listening to this. And we have seen this happening every day across all the organizations that I've worked for. It takes a lot of maturity, even of the person who's giving that feed forward input, because they are not attuned to that way of providing inputs, right? And oftentimes a lot of organizations talk about lead indicators, lag indicators, which is more important, which is not important. So in PepsiCo, if I have to say this, I think there's a lot of impetus on how managers are holding those critical conversations. Because at the end of the day, we don't want that the person should move out of the conference room disappointed, as if this person is not capable of doing anything more. Anybody who is coming in for a conversation is looking forward to something developmental. And when we're talking about so much of AI, as an organization, we are also leveraging AI to give us that input. This is the performance of the individual. This is the behavioral feedback that we have got. How do we kind of create a developmental conversation? So in PepsiCo, it is called ACE, which is developmental conversation. We don't have feedback conversations, right? And very rightly said, I'm so happy that you called out that the Arjuna story, but this is very important. And especially for emerging businesses, this is all the more important because by 2030, 30% of our workforce is going to be Gen Z. And for Gen Z, the most important thing as per research studies is the purpose that they achieve at the workplace. And if it is full of feedback, I don't think so we are meeting that objective any which ways.
Great, this development conversation. I think this development conversation is important. How does every person expand his or her, sphere of influence, not just think about himself or herself, but expand. Arpita, would you like to kind of comment on what you have seen happen in organizations, or is enough being done in this space?
Sticking to my kind of training in international trade and conversations related to that, we have signed many MOUs for joint training and capacity building with multiple countries, and many countries are actually bringing in their traditional practices as a part of the trading curriculum. India has not so far really brought it as a part. We are talking a lot about yoga and all of that, but the mental health part of it and the kind of training and abilities to have better interpersonal skills, abilities to be strong enough to select and take decisions are not really so strong in our training. I think that's a lacuna that we can fill in, and under the joint programs we can push for some of these, because these are very needed even internationally, not only domestically, and India can take a lead in this direction.
Wherever there are human beings, interpersonal skills are absolutely required, because today what is happening is that technology is moving so fast, people are not understanding how to deal with it. But if a person had a very strong mindset, because see, there's so much chaos around, and if there is chaos in the mind also, it will be chaos everywhere. But if the mind is stabilized, our ability to handle the chaos will be far better. So I think we have 44 seconds left. If you want to add a point.
Yeah, I would just like to make a quick comment. As Gayatri ma'am said that feed forward, I think that's a fantastic concept, and at least our public organizations and corporate offices should take an example out of it. But the challenge is, she said about Gen Z, right? So how do we inculcate this mechanism? I think we need to start way early in our schools, because we see our kids are also into so much of tremendous pressure, whether it's school, peer, home, plus mobile is it's very easy for them to reach to their mobile, so many applications. Sadly, few of them are on social media also. So I believe this feed forward mechanism, if it can it can start from schools, I think there'll be nothing like it, and it will make our task more easy when these youngsters, when they come to college and further advance in their careers.
Absolutely, because this education has to be started at a level which is far ahead. And I think who made the point that the NEP, I think NEP is a great step towards that process. Thank you so much, everybody. Thank you, audience, and thank you. It was a great panel. Thank you, Anil. Thank you, Sabina.